The morning Caroline Patterson called me into her office, I had already packed my daughter's lunch, signed a chemistry permission slip, answered 3 plant delay emails, and argued with a toaster that only worked if you threatened it. That was my life at 38. Not exciting. Not messy. Not built for surprises. I lived in a 2-bedroom house 15 minutes from the industrial park, with a daughter named Lily who was 15, too smart for most excuses, and capable of making me feel old before 7 in the morning. "Dad, you bought the wrong yogurt again," she said, standing in front of the fridge in pajama pants and 1 sock. It was on the list. It said vanilla Greek. This says vanilla. It also says protein blend. That's not yogurt. That's punishment. I looked over from the stove, where I was trying not to burn eggs while reviewing a supplier message on my phone. File a complaint with procurement. You are procurement. I'm operations. Same energy. That was how most mornings went. Small fights. Toast crumbs. Missing chargers. Her backpack by the door even though I had asked her 1,000 times not to leave it there. I complained, but the truth was, I liked it. I liked the rhythm. I liked knowing where everything was supposed to be. I liked being the person she called when something broke, when something hurt, when something didn't make sense. I had promised myself a long time ago that I would never be the man who vanished. My father left when I was 9. No big scene, no final speech. He just packed slowly over a weekend, told me to be good for my mother, and then became a person people mentioned carefully. Years later, when Lily's mother decided motherhood had trapped her in a life she didn't want, I knew exactly what I had to do. I stayed. Not because I was noble, because somebody had to. At work, people knew me as steady. David Freeman, operations director. The guy who could walk into a delayed production meeting, look at the numbers, and make everyone stop panicking. I was not the loudest man in the room, not the richest, not the kind who made speeches at awards dinners. I kept plants running, trucks moving, costs down, and executives calm. That was probably why Caroline Patterson trusted me professionally. Personally, I had no idea what she thought of me. She was the CEO, which meant she existed above most of us like bad weather or a federal regulation. You felt her before you saw her. When she entered a conference room, people sat straighter. Nobody checked their phone. Nobody used vague numbers unless they wanted to be taken apart politely. Caroline was 41, sharp in a way that made people nervous, and she had the kind of control that looked effortless until you got close enough to see how much work it took. I had worked under her for almost 4 years and could count our personal conversations on one hand. Then came the gala. It was a company foundation event at the downtown hotel, all glass walls, silver trays, donors, board members, and people laughing too loudly at jokes from people who controlled budgets. I went because senior leadership was expected to attend. I wore the same dark suit I wore to every formal thing. I planned to stay 90 minutes, shake hands, drink sparkling water, and leave before dessert. That plan lasted until I found Caroline alone at the far end of the bar. At first, I didn't even realize it was her. Her hair was down, not pinned back like usual, and she had taken off the black jacket she'd worn on stage. She looked less like a CEO and more like a person who had been holding her breath all evening. "You're hiding," she said when she noticed me. I was going to call it strategic absence. That sounds like something legal approved. I laughed because I didn't expect her to say it. She looked at my glass. No real drink. I have a teenager at home. I like knowing where my keys are. "She must be lucky," Caroline said. It was a simple comment, but the way she said it made me look at her longer than I should have. Not flirtatious exactly. More like she had briefly forgotten who she was supposed to be. We talked for 20 minutes. Then 40. I told her Lily had a biology test and believed my eggs were overcooked on purpose. Caroline told me her mother had once corrected her handshake at age 12 because it lacked authority. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I remember too much champagne on her side, 2 glasses on mine, then a quieter hotel lounge after the crowd thinned. I remember her laughing once, really laughing, then stopping like she had given away classified information. I remember her hand on my sleeve in the elevator, her saying, "I don't want to be looked at for 5 minutes." After that, my memory came in pieces. Her room key, a door closing, her voice lower than usual. The strange feeling that both of us had stepped outside the lives we had built and did not know how to get back in. By morning, we were 2 adults standing on opposite sides of a hotel room, sober, dressed, and careful. "This can't become anything," she said. "I know. I'm your CEO. I know that too." She looked relieved and almost offended by my agreement. We left separately. I drove home, showered, made Lily pancakes because guilt makes me domestic, and told myself it had been one private mistake between two lonely people who knew better. 3 weeks later, Caroline's assistant called. "Miss Patterson would like to see you at 4. There was nothing strange in the words, but something in the timing caught me. 4 o'clock was not a normal meeting slot for her. By then, she was either with finance, legal, or on calls with people whose names showed up in business magazines. When I arrived, her blinds were closed. Caroline stood behind her desk, not sitting. That was the first thing I noticed. The second was that there were no folders, no screen presentation, no agenda. "David," she said, "close the door." I did. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The office was too quiet. 40 floors up, behind thick glass, the city looked clean and manageable. Inside that room, nothing felt manageable at all. She folded her hands once, then let them go. "I'm pregnant," she said. "It's yours." I heard the words clearly. Still, my mind refused to put them in order. I looked at her face, then at the desk, then back at her. "You're sure?" "Yes." "About?" "Yes." There was no anger in her voice. No accusation. No performance. She had walked into board fights worth hundreds of millions with less visible effort than it took her to stand there and tell me that. I sat down without being asked. She stayed standing. "I'm not asking you for anything right now," she said. "I've already made my decision. I'm keeping the baby." The word baby changed the temperature in the room. Not issue. Not situation. Not complication. Baby. I rubbed both hands over my face and tried to find the next correct sentence. There were 100 wrong ones waiting. Questions about timing, fear, careers, headlines, contracts, Lily, the company, her, me. But underneath all of that, something old and solid rose up in me. A child existed now. Maybe only as a beginning. Maybe small enough that the world did not know yet. But real. And I knew who I was not going to be. I looked up at her. "I'm not walking away." Her expression barely moved, but I saw the impact of it. Like she had prepared for arguments, denial, bargaining, maybe even relief if I wanted distance. She had not prepared for a plain answer. "David, you need to understand what this means." "I don't yet," I said. "Not all of it. But I understand that part. This cannot move through the company uncontrolled. I know. The board has to be handled. My mother will involve herself. Communications will eventually need a plan. If people connect this to you too early, it affects your position, my position, and the company." I nodded slowly. She was already building walls around it. I could hear the executive voice coming back, boardroom by boardroom, sentence by sentence. Then I noticed her hand. It was resting against the edge of the desk, fingers pressed hard into the wood. So I said the only thing that felt useful. "Caroline, I'm not here to make your life harder. But I'm not going to be hidden from my own child either." Her eyes held mine. "I don't know what that looks like," I added. "I'm not pretending I do. We can take time. We can be careful. But I will show up." For the first time since I had entered the room, she looked away. "That phrase," she said quietly. "People say that. I mean it." "I know," she said, and that sounded like the part that scared her. When I left her office, the hallway looked exactly the same. Same gray carpet. Same framed safety awards. Same assistants typing behind glass. Same executives walking with phones pressed to their ears. But I knew something had shifted. I walked to the elevator with my tie too tight and my pulse beating in my throat, thinking about Lily at home, Caroline behind that closed door, and a child neither of us had planned who had already rearranged the whole room. For the first few days after Caroline told me, we behaved like two people carrying a glass box through a crowded room. At work, nothing changed on the surface. She still ran the Monday executive meeting with that clean, impossible focus of hers. I still gave my production updates, still answered questions about downtime at the Ohio facility, still argued for extra maintenance budget, while finance looked at me like I had asked them to fund a moon landing. But every time Caroline looked across the table at me, even for half a second, I felt the truth sitting between us. Nobody else could see it. That made it heavier. The first message came from her 2 nights later. "Can you meet tomorrow morning before work? Somewhere not near the office." I stared at the text while Lily sat on the couch beside me, eating cereal out of a mug and pretending to study. "Who's that?" she asked without looking up. "Work." You made a face. "I have a work face." "You have several." That one is problem with shoes. I glanced down. What does that even mean? It means somebody stepped in something, and now you have to pretend it isn't on the carpet. That was way too close, so I put the phone down. The next morning, I met Caroline at a coffee shop 20 minutes west of headquarters, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and students who looked like they had been awake since 2019. She arrived in sunglasses, a gray coat, and no visible jewelry except a simple watch. If anyone recognized her, they didn't show it. She had already picked a back table. "You're early," I said. "So are you." "I'm usually early." "I know." That caught me a little. "You know? I know more about my senior staff than they think." Comforting. It's supposed to be. We sat with 2 coffees between us, both untouched. For a minute, we were awkward in a way we had never been at work. At work, there were charts, numbers, problems with names. Here, there was just us and the reason we were meeting. "I have an appointment Thursday," she said. "A medical one." I nodded. "Do you want me there?" Her fingers tightened around the cup. "I don't know." "That's allowed." She looked at me like I had answered wrong, but not badly. "I'm used to deciding before I speak," she said. "I'm used to making lunch while answering emails. We all have talents." The corner of her mouth moved, almost a smile. That became the pattern. Not easy exactly, but possible. We met twice the next week. Once for coffee, once for lunch at a quiet place tucked behind an office park where nobody from our company would willingly eat because the service was slow and the soup tasted like warm pencil water. Caroline ordered salad, took 3 bites, and then admitted she couldn't stand the smell of it. "You can say you hate the salad," I told her. "I chose it." That doesn't make it good. I don't enjoy being corrected by consequences. That might be the most CEO sentence I've ever heard. She pushed the plate away and, for the first time, laughed without catching herself. Those meetings started practical. Timing. Doctors. Legal questions we didn't want to say too loudly. How long she could keep the pregnancy private. When the board would need to know. What my role could be without putting both of us under a spotlight too soon. But slowly, other things slipped in. She asked about Lily. Not casually, like people do when they want to seem polite. She asked what grade she was in, what she liked, what made her difficult, what made her happy. I told her Lily liked robotics, crime documentaries, cinnamon gum, and telling me my jeans looked tired. "She sounds confident," Caroline said. "She sounds expensive." "You raised her alone?" "Since she was a baby, basically." Caroline waited. She was good at that, waiting without filling the space. So I told her more than I expected to. I told her Lily's mother left when Lily was 2. How she said she couldn't breathe inside the life we had. How I used to stay awake listening for Lily through the baby monitor even after she was old enough to come get me herself. How I learned which hair ties didn't pull, which teachers needed reminders, which parents at birthday parties looked at me like I was either tragic or heroic when mostly I was just tired. "My father left too," I said, "when I was a kid. So when Lily's mom left, I knew what absence does. I wasn't going to add mine." Caroline's face changed, but only slightly. "My mother never left," she said. "She stayed everywhere. In every room. Every decision." That was the first time she told me about Victoria. Not a dramatic story. Caroline didn't tell stories dramatically. She explained them like she was briefing a hostile board. Victoria Patterson had built half the company before Caroline ever took the top job. She had raised her daughter in conference rooms, airport lounges, private schools, and dinners where children were expected to shake hands like adults. Weakness was corrected early. Emotion was something to manage before other people used it. "When I was 14, Caroline said, I cried before a speech competition. My mother didn't comfort me. She handed me tissues and said, 'Never arrive swollen-eyed to a room that wants to rank you.' I didn't know what to say, so I said, 'That's terrible.'" Caroline looked surprised. "It was useful. Useful and terrible can sit at the same table." She watched me for a long second, like that idea had not been offered to her very often. By the 3rd week, I knew I had to tell Lily. I tried to find the right moment, which was stupid because there was no right moment to tell your teenage daughter that your boss was expecting your baby. I waited until Sunday evening after dinner. She was loading the dishwasher badly, which meant I had one normal thing to correct before I broke the world open. "Plates face inward," I said. "You say that like the dishwasher has a soul. It has water jets. Same thing. Lil, come sit for a minute." She turned around with a fork in her hand. That sounded divorced. I almost laughed. Then I didn't. Her face sharpened. What happened? We sat at the kitchen table. Same table where I had helped with math homework, filled out school forms, paid bills, fixed a bracelet clasp with tweezers because she had been 12 and crying before a dance. I kept my voice steady. I need to tell you something big, and I need you to know first that you are not being replaced. Nothing about you and me changes in the way that matters. Her eyes narrowed. Dad, I took a breath. Caroline Patterson is pregnant. You're Caroline Patterson? She's not my Caroline Patterson. Your CEO, Caroline Patterson? Yes. Lily stared at me. Then she said, very slowly, why are you telling me that like it involves us? I couldn't soften it. She would hate me more if I tried. Because the baby is mine. The fork was still in her hand. She looked down at it like she had forgotten why she was holding it, then set it on the table with careful precision. For a few seconds, she said nothing. Then, are you serious? Yes. Is this why you've been weird? Yes. Were you going to tell me before the baby started college? I'm telling you now. That's not an answer. You're right. I should have told you as soon as I understood what was happening. She stood up, walked to the fridge, opened it, closed it, then turned back to me. So what? You're having a second family now. The words hit exactly where she aimed them. No, I said. I'm having another child. That means our family changes. It does not mean I leave this one. You say that like it's simple. It isn't. She's your boss. Yes. That's insane. I know. Does she even like kids? I don't know yet. That answer made Lily blink. It was honest enough to interrupt her anger. You don't know? I know she's serious. I know she's scared even if she won't say it. I know she's keeping the baby. I know I'm going to be involved. Lily wrapped her arms around herself. And where am I supposed to go in all this? Nowhere, I said. You stay right here. With me. You get to be mad. You get to ask questions. You don't have to pretend this is good news today. Her eyes got shiny, and she hated that, so she looked toward the window. I don't want to be awful, she said. You're not. I kind of am. You're 15. It's part of the contract. That got half a breath out of her, not quite a laugh. She went upstairs after that. No slammed door, which somehow felt worse. I stayed at the table for a long time, staring at the fork she had left behind. The next morning at work, rumors had already started moving. Not about me. Not yet. But Caroline had canceled 2 evening appearances and shifted 1 board dinner to video. Someone in communications asked me, too casually, whether I had noticed anything different about her schedule. By lunch, Robert Chase, our chief operating officer, stepped into my office and closed the door. Something's forming upstairs, he said. I kept my face neutral. Meaning the board knows something we don't, and comms is acting like a pipe is leaking behind the wall. Could be acquisition talk. It isn't. Robert studied me. He was a good operator, older than me, sharp without needing to prove it. Just be careful, David, he said. That sounds like advice with missing pages. It is. After he left, I sat there with an unread production report open in front of me. My phone buzzed. Caroline, are you all right? I looked at the message for a long time before answering. I told Lily. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. How did she take it? Like a smart girl whose family just changed without her permission. A minute passed. Then Caroline wrote, I'm sorry. I expected something cleaner from her. Something more controlled. Instead, those 2 words sat on my screen, plain and inadequate and real. That evening, after Lily went to her room, Caroline called. It was supposed to be a practical call. She said that right away. I only wanted to check whether she needs anything from me, she said. She needs time. Of course. Then neither of us hung up. I stood in my dark kitchen, leaning against the counter. She was somewhere quiet too. I could hear the faint hum of air through a large room. She matters more than my comfort, Caroline said. I closed my eyes for a second. Thank you for understanding that. I don't know how to do this, she said. Neither do I. You seem like you do. No. I just know how not to leave. The silence after that was different from the others. Not empty. Not awkward. Full somehow. When we finally hung up, I looked upstairs toward Lily's closed door and then down at the phone in my hand. For the first time, this didn't feel like only a crisis we were containing. It felt like someone else was starting to stand inside it with me. Caroline told the board on a Tuesday morning, and by lunch the whole executive floor felt like it was pretending not to breathe. Nobody said anything directly, of course. People at that level did not gossip like normal people. They adjusted their voices. They paused when someone walked past. They asked questions with clean edges. Will Ms. Patterson be attending the supplier dinner next month? Has communications revised the Q3 leadership calendar? Are we expecting any personal announcements that may affect investor calls? Personal announcements. That was what they called a baby when there were stockholders nearby. I heard about the board meeting from Caroline afterward, not during. She texted me at 12:18. It's done. I was standing in the maintenance bay at Plant 2, hard hat under one arm, listening to a supervisor explain why a packaging line had gone down again. I stared at the two words longer than I should have. All right, I wrote back. A few minutes passed. Functional. That was Caroline. Not fine. Not upset. Functional. I almost smiled, then remembered where I was. By 3 that afternoon, Robert Chase came into my office without knocking. That was new. Robert always knocked, even when he was irritated. He shut the door behind him. The board was told this morning, he said. I kept my eyes on him. Told what? He gave me a look that said we were past theater. Caroline's pregnant. I said nothing. Officially, there's no father in the conversation. Unofficially, people are already building lists in their heads. People should work more. They should. They won't. He sat down across from me and lowered his voice. I don't know anything, David. I'm not asking to know. But I'm telling you, communications is nervous, legal is quiet, and Victoria Patterson's car was downstairs at 1. That name changed the room. I had never met Victoria, but everyone in the company knew the shape of her. Founder, strategist, former chair, still powerful enough that board members returned her calls before their own doctors. Caroline had her last name, her office, and part of her armor because of that woman. She's involved. I asked. Robert leaned back. She's Victoria. Involved is her resting state. An hour later, Caroline called. Can you come to the private conference suite at 7? That sounds like a place where people lose money. It's where my mother wants to meet you. I stood up without meaning to. She knows. She suspects enough. I didn't confirm it. She asked for you by name. Caroline. I know. Her voice was tight, but not shaky. She was already braced for impact. Do you want me there? I asked. There was a small pause. Yes, she said. But not because I need you to perform. I need you to hear her clearly. The private conference suite was on the 39th floor, one level below Caroline's office, with darker walls, thicker carpet, and a table long enough to make everyone feel slightly accused. When I arrived, Victoria Patterson was already sitting at the far end with a leather folder in front of her. She was in her late 60s, silver hair cut sharp at the jaw, wearing a cream jacket and no expression I could use. Caroline stood by the window, arms folded, looking younger than I had ever seen her and hating it. Mr. Freeman, Victoria said. Thank you for coming. Not David. Not good evening. Mr. Freeman. I took the chair she indicated because refusing would have been childish. Mrs. Patterson. Victoria is fine. I'll stay with Mrs. Patterson. Her eyes moved over me once, quick and complete, like I was a file that had arrived with missing tabs. I understand you have found yourself in a sensitive situation. Caroline turned from the window. Mother. Victoria lifted one hand without looking at her. Not angry. Not loud. Just stopping her. I'm not here to embarrass anyone. I'm here because timing matters. Structure matters. A lack of structure invites damage. I kept my voice even. What kind of structure? She opened the folder. Inside were papers. Not many. Cleanly clipped. I did not reach for them. A private agreement, she said. Generous. Protective. You would not be financially burdened. Your daughter's education could be secured. Your future employment concerns would be handled separately. No one would need to know more than necessary. Caroline's face went still. I looked at the folder, then at Victoria. And the child? The child would be provided for. That wasn't my question. For the first time, Victoria looked faintly disappointed, as if I had chosen the wrong move in a game she had been kind enough to simplify. Mr. Freeman, fatherhood can mean many things in modern arrangements. Not to me. That is sentimental language. It's plain language. She folded her hands on the folder. You work for my daughter. You are respected, yes, but replaceable in the public story. She is not. The company is not. A public attachment between a CEO and her operations director, resulting in a pregnancy, would create unnecessary questions about judgment, governance, favoritism, and leadership stability. I felt Caroline shift by the window, but I did not look at her. If I looked, I might soften. and I needed Victoria to understand this for me. I'm aware of what it looks like, I said. Are you aware of what it costs? Probably not all of it. Then let me be clear. You can leave this room with your dignity intact, your finances improved, your child acknowledged privately, and your daughter protected from attention she did not ask for. There it was. Lily. Not said cruelly. Worse. Said accurately. My hands tightened under the table. Do not use my daughter as a lever. Victoria's expression did not change. I am naming consequences. No. You're offering to buy quiet and calling it protection. Caroline said my name softly, not warning me, maybe grounding me. I looked at Victoria again. I'm not after Caroline's money. I'm not after her office. I'm not trying to turn this into a public drama. But I will not sign myself out of my child's life because it makes the story cleaner. Write in the comments. Was I right to refuse her mother's offer? Or should I have protected my daughter from the scandal and stepped back? Victoria studied me. And if your presence damages the mother, then we find a way to be careful. We do not pretend I'm a line item. You believe steadiness is enough. No, I said, but it's what I have. That was the first moment I saw something pass through Caroline's face. Not relief exactly. Recognition. Victoria closed the folder. You are making an emotional decision. I'm making a permanent one. Permanent decisions are where emotion does the most damage. I stood then. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just done. I had a father who treated leaving like an option. I know what that does to a child. So whatever agreement eventually gets written, whatever lawyers need to review, whatever timing keeps the company from catching fire, start with this. I am not disappearing. The room went quiet. Victoria looked at Caroline for the first time. You see the problem. Caroline stepped away from the window. No, she said. I see the difference. Victoria's jaw tightened just enough to show she had heard it. I left a few minutes later. Caroline did not follow right away. I took the elevator down alone, feeling calm in that strange way a person feels calm after something inside him has already decided and his body is just catching up. By the next morning, things had sharpened. Someone had left an anonymous note in Caroline's assistant's inbox. Not on paper. A typed message from a temporary account, saying people deserve transparency from leadership and that secrets always came out. Caroline showed it to me on her phone in a service corridor near the legal department because even meeting in offices now felt too visible. Security is tracing it, she said. Can they? Maybe. Do you think it's about me? I think someone knows enough to be dangerous and not enough to be accurate. That sentence stayed with me. At lunch, two finance directors stopped talking when I entered the elevator. One of them stared at my left hand, as if a ring would explain something. By 4, communications had drafted 3 announcement scenarios, none of which named me, all of which turned Caroline into a leadership case study instead of a person. That evening, I went home and found Lily sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and her homework untouched. People at school know your company? She asked. Some do. Would my name be online if this gets weird? I put my keys down slowly. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that. That's not no. No, I said. It's not. She swallowed, trying hard to look older than she was. Are you scared? Yes. Good, she said. Because I am too. I sat across from her. I know. She looked at me for a long time, then said, but you still have to do it. I did not ask what she meant. She meant show up. Later that night, Caroline called from her car. I could hear rain hitting the windshield. She offered you money, she said. She offered structure. That's what she calls money when it has instructions. I leaned against the kitchen counter in the dark. Are you angry I refused? No. Are you angry she offered? A long silence. I'm angry that part of me expected it, Caroline said. And I'm angry that I knew exactly how the agreement would be written before she opened the folder. That's not your fault. It is my inheritance. I heard the exhaustion in her voice then. Not CEO exhaustion. Not the kind that came from meetings or schedules. Something older. She thinks everyone can be handled, Caroline said. Can they? Usually. And me? The rain filled the line for a second. No, she said. That's what frightens her. Then, quieter, and me. I did not answer right away. I let her have the truth without cleaning it up. I'm not trying to corner you, Caroline. I know. I'm not trying to win against your mother. I know that too. Then what scares you? Her breath shifted. That you meant it, she said. That you sat across from her with nothing to gain and still meant every word. I looked toward the stairs, where Lily's bedroom light was still on under the door. "That's not nothing to gain," I said. Caroline was quiet. Then she said, "No, I suppose it isn't." When we hung up, I stood there in the kitchen, phone in my hand, the house silent around me except for the refrigerator and the old pipes ticking in the walls. I had not won anything. The company was circling. Victoria was not done. Lily was frightened. Caroline was trapped between the life growing inside her and the system that had taught her to manage every vulnerable thing before it could be used. But something had changed in that conference room. Caroline had seen me refuse the clean exit, and I had seen her, for one brief second, believe that maybe not every person who stayed was setting a trap. The first time Caroline came to my house, Lily cleaned the kitchen like she was preparing for a government inspection. Not because she was excited, because she was nervous and wanted control over something. She wiped the counter twice, moved the fruit bowl 3 inches, then stood in the middle of the room holding a dish towel like it had personally offended her. "Why is she coming here again?" she asked. "Because meeting at coffee shops forever is weird. Lots of things about this are weird." "That's fair. She's not going to inspect us, right?" I looked up from setting plates on the table. "Inspect us? She's a CEO. That's what they do. They walk into places and decide what's inefficient. She is not coming here as a CEO." Lily gave me a flat look. "Does she know that?" I didn't have a perfect answer, so I just said, "She's trying." That made Lily quiet. Caroline arrived at 6 sharp, because of course she did. No driver. No assistant. Just her, standing on our porch in a dark coat, holding a small paper bag from the bakery near my office. When I opened the door, she looked almost startled by the normalness of the place. The narrow hallway. Lily's sneakers by the wall. The framed school photo from 8th grade that Lily hated. The old umbrella stand I kept meaning to throw away. "Hi," Caroline said. "Hi." Neither of us moved for half a second. Then Lily appeared behind me and said, "You brought croissants?" Caroline held up the bag. I was told arriving empty-handed was rude. "By who?" "My assistant." "At least someone at your company gives good advice." Caroline blinked, then smiled a little. She usually does. Dinner was not smooth, but it was real. Lily asked direct questions because that was how she protected herself. "Do you actually want this baby?" Caroline set her fork down. I started to step in, but she answered before I could. "Yes." "Did you want my dad involved?" Caroline looked at me once, then back at Lily. At first, I didn't know what involvement could look like without hurting everyone. But yes, I want him involved. "That's not exactly the same thing." "No," Caroline said. "It isn't. I'm learning the difference." Lily studied her like she was trying to decide whether honesty counted if it came in careful packaging. Then she asked, "Are you going to make him sign something?" "Lawyers will write things," Caroline said. "But I don't want your father reduced to paperwork." That answer landed. Lily looked down at her plate. "Good. Because he's annoying, but he shows up." "I've noticed," Caroline said. I had to turn toward the sink for a second, pretending to grab water, because that one hit harder than I expected. After dinner, Lily took Caroline into the living room to show her a robotics video from school. I stayed in the kitchen washing plates slowly, listening to their voices from the next room. Lily explained the project too fast. Caroline asked serious questions. Not fake adult questions. Real ones. Gear ratios. Team roles. Why the robot kept turning left. By the time Caroline left, Lily did not hug her. She did not make some big speech. She just stood by the door and said, "You can come again, I guess." From Lily, that was practically a parade. Outside, Caroline stopped beside her car. "She's remarkable," she said. "She gets it from me. She gets some of it from you." I laughed, and for once, she did too without checking herself. Then her phone buzzed. I watched her face close before she even answered. She looked at the screen and turned it slightly away from me, but I saw the name. Victoria. Caroline didn't pick up. The next morning, the company pressure finally broke open. Not publicly, but close enough. A senior vice president made a comment in a closed meeting about leadership distractions. Someone leaked part of Caroline's calendar to an industry blog. Nothing explosive, but enough to start chatter. Communications wanted to release a clean statement. Legal wanted silence. The board wanted assurance. Everyone wanted control. Caroline called me into her office at the end of the day. The blinds were open this time. That was the first thing I noticed. She stood by her desk with 3 folders in front of her and no jacket, one hand resting lightly against her stomach. She had started doing that sometimes without realizing it. My mother wants a transition plan drafted, she said. For maternity leave? For influence. I nodded slowly. She thinks if she can set the terms now, everything afterward becomes easier to govern. The announcement, the leave structure, the baby, you, eventually Lily. I felt my jaw tighten. No, I know. The way she said it made me stop. She wasn't asking me to fight the room for her. She had already decided. I told the board this afternoon that I'll announce the pregnancy on my terms, she said. No father named yet. No invented story. No false distance either. I told them my private life will not become a shareholder performance, and my child will not be managed by committee. I stared at her. That must have gone well. It was quiet. Dangerous quiet? Very. She almost smiled, but her eyes were tired. And your mother? I told her she is not negotiating access to my child. I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. Caroline looked at me then, fully. I also told her that any parenting agreement will begin with the assumption that you are the child's father in fact, not just biology. That room had held the worst sentence of my life a few weeks earlier. I'm pregnant. It's yours. Now it held something different. Not easy. Not safe. But chosen. What does that mean? I asked. It means shared decisions. A real schedule when the baby is old enough. Your name where it belongs. Your daughter treated as part of the child's family if she wants that, and never as a public detail. It means we build something that works before lawyers polish it into language. I looked out through the glass wall, at assistants moving past, executives walking quickly, the whole machine still hungry outside her office. And us? I asked. Caroline's face changed. There it was. The question we had both been walking around because the practical problems were easier to name. She came around the desk slowly. I don't know how to do us without turning it into strategy, she said. I don't know how to do us without worrying I'm risking Lily's peace. That matters. So do you. She stopped in front of me. For a few seconds, neither of us tried to make it cleaner than it was. Then she said, I don't want a managed arrangement with you. That was the closest thing to a confession I had ever heard from her. I nodded once. I don't want to be just the man who did the right thing. You're not. Her voice was quiet, but sure. That evening, I told Lily what Caroline had said. We sat on the back steps, both wearing hoodies, watching the neighbor's dog dig at the fence like it had discovered buried treasure. So I'd be what? Lily asked. A sister? If you want. That's not really how babies work. They don't ask permission. No, but your place in it is yours to decide. She picked at the sleeve of her sweatshirt. I don't want to hate it, she said. I know. And I don't want you to look at me differently once there's a little kid who needs you all the time. That one hurt because it was honest. I turned toward her. Lily, when you were born, I didn't become smaller. I became more responsible. That's going to happen again. But you and me? That doesn't get erased. You'll be tired. Probably. You'll be annoying. Definitely. She leaned her shoulder against mine for the first time in days. Can I pick one baby outfit that says something rude? 1, 2, 1, and it can't get me contacted by the preschool. She smiled, small but real. A week later, Caroline made the announcement internally. It was short, clean, no dramatic language. She said she was expecting a child, that the company had a continuity plan, that her leadership remained steady, and that private family details would remain private. She looked directly into the camera the whole time. People still talked. Of course they did. But something about her tone gave them less room to feed on it. Victoria did not disappear. Women like her never did. She sent messages through attorneys, board allies, family offices, all wrapped in polished concern. But Caroline stopped answering every hook. Sometimes she let silence do the work. Sometimes she forwarded things to legal. Sometimes she called me and said, remind me normal people eat dinner without agenda items. So I did. There was no perfect ending. My career did not suddenly become safe. Caroline's world did not soften overnight. Lily still had days when she went quiet and needed reassurance without asking for it. I still woke up some mornings with the weight of what was coming sitting on my chest before I even opened my eyes. But we began. That was the thing. We began with a shared calendar that had doctor appointments beside Lily's robotics meets. We began with Sunday dinners twice a month, then 3 times, then whenever it made sense. We began with Caroline standing in my kitchen, sleeves rolled up, cutting vegetables badly while Lily explained why her technique was corporate but ineffective. We began with lawyers drafting papers that followed the life we were already trying to build, not the other way around. And one night, months after that first terrible office meeting, Caroline and I stood on my porch after Lily had gone inside. The air was cold. Her hand rested in mine like it had taken both of us a long time to admit it belonged there. "This started by accident," she said. "I know." She looked through the front window, where Lily was pretending not to watch us from the hallway. "And now," I squeezed her hand once. "Now we choose what happens next." Caroline leaned against me, not like a woman needing rescue, and not like a CEO allowing weakness. Just like someone tired of standing alone. And for the first time, I could see the shape of it ahead of us. Not clean, not simple, not the family any of us would have drawn if life had asked first.